a big night for Rick Santorum. He was able to win Alabama and Mississippi, two key states in the Deep South. The results were really tight. Mitt Romney had a stronger performance than we probably would have expected a week ago, but because he spent so much time in Alabama and Mississippi down the stretch, I think he kind of raised expectations. The big loser on Tuesday night was Newt Gingrich, who had kind of banked on a strong showing in the South.
We'll look at the big board here while we're talking to you, Patrick. Keep going.
Okay.
Let's show people the results.
He had won in South Carolina and in Georgia, and had said that he needed to sweep the Deep South if he had any shot at the nomination. Obviously, that did not happen. He was able to edge Mitt Romney in both states for a narrow second-place finish. But we've already seen some calls for him to drop out, and I expect that probably will continue today and on into the rest of the week.
Now, any upset would have been great for Mitt Romney. He had kind of set expectations. He was hoping to get at least one, right?
Yeah, they had, I think a week beforehand, no one expected him to fare very well. It's Alabama and Mississippi, obviously. I think 3/4 of the vote I believe in Alabama were evangelical Christians, and 80% of the vote in Mississippi was evangelical Christians. Given those demographics, I think everybody thought that it was going to be a stretch for Mitt Romney to actually win. But they didn't do the best job of managing expectations down the stretch. They made a last-minute push to try and steal a victory in both states. In the end, they did what they wanted to do, which was minimize the amount of delegates that Rick Santorum was able to pick up or Newt Gingrich was able to pick up. But it did not turn out the way that they had hoped, particularly given the amount of money that they had spent and their organizational prowess in both states.
Patrick, it's Evan. Let's talk about the math here. What does the math tell us? Does the math tell us that Santorum has any shot here, or do the numbers kind of start really working in Romney's favor, especially given that he's picking up, almost a third of the delegates in each of these southern states?
Yeah, the math does not work for Rick Santorum very well. He's going to have to he's going to need to get a couple clean sweeps. And the way the Republican National Committee has devised this system with proportional balloting, it's very difficult for anyone to score a major win. And given Romney's fairly sizable edge in delegates right now, if he's able to kind of proceed apace, it's going to be very difficult for Rick Santorum to catch him. You have California and Texas and New York are probably the biggest remaining delegate caches, but in each case, Romney's going to have a pretty strong opportunity to steal a lot of delegates from Santorum. Given that dynamic, it's going to be very difficult for Santorum to catch him. The big thing that Rick Santorum would need right now is to go head-to-head with Romney so that he's not seeing. I mean, Newt Gingrich, basically they all got 30% of the vote in these two states. If Gingrich weren't there, Santorum would have gotten a much larger proportion of the delegates, and that would have helped him kind of make up lost ground. But because Gingrich is in the race, that's going to be almost impossible for him to do unless Gingrich's support falls off a cliff.
Patrick, by the way, the winner needs to secure 1144 delegates. How does the math work for Romney? He can get to 1144?
He can, but it's going to be a long slog. I think the best case scenario is that he wraps this thing up toward the end of May, but it could go into June, which I don't think is something that they want to deal with. But he has said from the beginning that he built his campaign for a long slog. I think he said that hoping that he wouldn't have to go through it. But now that he's in it, they can get there. The hard part is going to be, Newt Gingrich has said that he wants to stay in so he can prevent Mitt Romney from actually getting enough delegates to lock up the nomination before the convention. It could be tight, but the chances are that Romney would actually get there.
So, Pat, what is the calculation going on in the Santorum camp right now? I mean, given that unless Gingrich suddenly flips and gives him all his delegates, I don't even know if you could do that, frankly. What is the calculation? That they kind of hang in this thing? I mean, when it comes to New York and California, those are not going to be big Santorum states, I don't think. And so the odds of them winning the thing are pretty low. What does he want at the end of the day?
That's a good question. I mean, I think he thinks he's got a shot to win. I think that reality, we're really getting back into another lull here where we're not going to see a bunch of delegates apportioned until the end of April. So this thing can kind of bounce around for a while. I think if he were not to do well in Pennsylvania, if Romney were to beat him there, then that would probably be, maybe a campaign-ending embarrassment. But I think at this point, he wants to go in as deep in this contest as he possibly can. Now, if the friction becomes so much that it's going to kind of, you got to keep in mind with Newt Gingrich, he's in his late 60s. Rick Santorum's in his early 50s. Rick Santorum has a lot more to lose by not ending this thing well. I think right now he thinks he's got a shot to win, but I think if it becomes abundantly clear that that's not going to happen, he's going to have to start figuring out an exit strategy that's going to kind of benefit him down the line.
Great. Patrick, thank you so much. And next Tuesday, we're going to be looking to Illinois. Right now, we're actually going to jump over to talk a little bit about Newt Gingrich. Danny Adrin joins us to tell us really what's going on in his head. Danny, Newt needed to sweep the Deep South, and he didn't win. He only won Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, even as recently as a week ago, his own spokesman said Newt needs to win both Alabama and Mississippi to remain credible. And as you can see, that definitely did not happen last night.
So, one thing that confuses me here, Gingrich says his goal now is to block Mitt Romney, right? But isn't he helping Mitt Romney by staying in the race?
Most people would say that, yes, by staying in, even though Rick Santorum has now shown he can win, a popular vote in his state, with or without Newt Gingrich. Newt took a lot of delegates from Rick Santorum last night, which is preventing him from making up any ground on Mitt Romney. Now, if you talk to people who have known Newt for a long time, because he's been in politics since the 70s, this is part of a guy who really thinks, no one else is fit for this office, and he sees himself as sort of the guy meant for this historic moment.
I want to be straightforward. I'm a visionary, he said. I thought that was a great quote from your story.
Yeah, no, I was with him in Alabama last week, and he says things like this on the stump all the time, where he compares himself to John F. Kennedy, Thomas Jefferson, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, sometimes Christopher Columbus.
Here, we've got a shot here of Mitt Romney. We're going to take a listen to him last night, JR.
The fact is, in both states, the conservative candidates got nearly 70% of the vote. And if you're the front runner and you keep coming in third, you're not much of a front runner.
That was Newt Gingrich, not Mitt Romney.
Very, very practiced in the art of the pot shot. That's what we call that. Newt will come out. Maybe Newt's looking to sell some books or get some kind of hosting job at Fox.
I mean, does he?
It's unclear what he's doing at this stage.
Is he making a play to be Romney's running mate potentially? If he wraps up enough delegates, can he say, "Look, I'll throw my delegates to you"?
Would you want Newt Gingrich as your vice president?
Not
necessarily. Give me a break.
Look, but does he get any leverage? Is he going to win? What does he get by staying in the race?
In theory, leverage at the convention, but Newt has said many times, "I would be the worst running mate you can think of," as you guys just noted. And this is sort of, this is, as Patrick noted earlier, this is a man who is 68, is worth more than enough to live comfortably, and this is sort of his last bid for public office, and he really wanted one more shot. And I guess he's not in the mood right now to give up to a candidate he does not feel is up to the task.
Danny, one other question. I'm curious about the money situation for Newt Gingrich. Sheldon Adelson, the casino magnate, had helped him dramatically build momentum for his campaign. What's the money situation? Is Adelson still helping out Newt?
That's actually one thing that could make this very interesting. Now, Adelson, or no one near him, has given any indication more money is on the way. But Adelson has also made it clear that his next choice is Mitt Romney, and that he really opposes Rick Santorum. So, as we've reported before, Sheldon could inject more money into Newt's campaign to prevent Rick from making up too much ground. Now, he hasn't done that yet, but that is one thing that could make Newt's campaign still very interesting in the months ahead.
Well,
great.
The one thing you should never do, Rolf, is underestimate the vanity of a politician who fancies himself an intellectual. So I think Newt Gingrich probably has longer legs than we're giving him credit for better or worse.
Well, after this, we're going to talk a little bit about Apple and the NCAA tournament. That's what I want to talk about. Thanks so much, Danny, for joining us.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
And now for a check of the markets, we got Dow Jones' Michael Casey here. Michael, tell us a little bit about the big thing today is the bank stress test.
Yeah, although, you know,
That was the big thing
well,
yesterday.
Big thing yesterday.
It
But
wasn't
people were
supposed to
excited
be
about
the
that.
big thing. The
But
Fed
people
had
are
a
excited
plan.
about that.
The Fed had a plan. It was going to release these numbers on Thursday. Then JP Morgan jumps the gun half an hour before the market's closing and gives us the rally we were supposed to get either today or I suppose on the Friday, right? And so, because of course it had, unlike Citi, some good news to tell. And in fact, so did 15 of the banks have quite good news to tell. That is that they passed all aspects of the stress test. Citigroup, on the other hand, not so great. It was okay. It's just that its capital plans, it did plan to give back some to buy back some stock.
We're going to show the share price of the banks right here for.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're getting out of that. Other than the fact, I mean, look, the banks, they popped, like JP Morgan was up 7% yesterday. That's a big move.
Right, but it was very good news for them, right? I mean, here they are, they're able to both raise their dividend and announce a buyback. You know, and it was a kind of like, haha, you know, we're as Jamie Dimon seems to be want to do, we're the biggest man in town, and look how good we are. Ultimately, though, whatever rally the stock market was to get out of that was kind of used up in the last sort of hour of trading.
There you go again. There you go again.
I'm just simply saying that the futures are level. I'm not making any judgment.
Okay.
The futures right now, Dow's up a little bit and the S&P was down. What's interesting though, I mean, we now safely above 13,000 for the Dow, above 3,000 for the Nasdaq. So we've got this kind of risk on.
Can we talk about the Treasury market?
I'm about
I think
to
that's
get
the
there.
most interesting
I'm
thing.
about to get there. Okay. And ultimately, at the same time, we're seeing things like the dollar rally. Now, the dollar is typically run in inverse correlation to stocks and to risk assets. So we're seeing a kind of a positive US story right now, which means that things like gold and oil are selling off in this kind of reverse response to that. Treasuries, on the other hand, are they're selling off this morning, but they're still.
Are you kidding? They got clobbered. The last 2 days. That's a big sell-off in the Treasury. By the way, I'm not saying it's that dramatic.
TBT trade.
But what did you expect?
Newark wants the TBT trade to turn here.
No, you got the.
He's been short Treasury bonds for 3 years now.
No, a year and a half. But that's been too long. I got the 10-year. I think was close to 220. It was trading around the 220 level. You have to remember, it was below 1.9 a couple of weeks ago.
No, true.
And that's for the Treasury market. That's a big move.
Right, it is. But you and I were chatting about this just a week ago. It's still like below where it was.
I understand, but
in
what happens is that when traders and a lot of money managers feel like a trade has broken, like a lot of people have been very long government paper. If the sentiment kind of seeps into the market that trade is over,
right.
you could see assets flow out of the bond market. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying there's a high likelihood.
I do think one of the biggest
happens.
risks that's out there is, and it's perhaps playing out already, is the unwind of this big Treasuries rally. And certainly the Fed is in this awkward position. What will it do come the end of June when it has to end Operation Twist? And of course, yesterday's Fed statement was pretty. Look, it was incremental in 7 different ways in which it changed the statement from the previous, but every single one of those incremental changes signified this kind of shift towards a slightly less accommodative stance. And that's all you need. You need a turn in the direction, and I think the market was pretty convinced that that's it. I mean, QE3 is off the table, and we now have to at least prepare ourselves for rate hikes as far into the future as that might be, all of which is a turning. And that's why the dollar is rallying. That's why Treasuries have come off as much as they have.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us, Michael.
Thanks, guys.
Well, in a second, we're going to talk a little bit about March Madness. I mean, I'm excited, right?